The humble believer, with his heavenly skies and hashtag deep music going on in the background. Alright, Mr. Humble, what do you have for us today in your humbleness? Because man, if it's talking shit about other people whilst thinking that you know better than them all, well, that would just be a wee bit ironic. Although, not what we in the biz call a goddamn surprise.
My 15-year-old was studying biology and his teacher was an atheist.
Oh my god, that's just so fucking irrelevant to anything whatsoever. Why should that matter? How do you even know that? Like, surely the only thing you should know about your child's biology teacher is that they have some kind of formal degree in biology. Look man, I'm not usually one to call bullshit, like constantly, all the time, in every video or anything like that. But I think that's bullshit, as it always is in all of my videos.
And he came and told me that he was studying biology and he said that his teacher said that we can explain life without God.
Did he? Did he really? Look man, that sounds really fucking unlikely, since he would have like little to no reason to say that. And it doesn't even make sense really, seeing as theoretically a god-type creature could have made the universe the way it is, with the mechanics the way they function, without needing to have sat down to make everything on purpose. Honestly, it sounds like the sort of thing you made up so that you could tell some really hashtag clever story about how biology boy am the big stupid and the atheists are scumbags who hate God or some shit. But sure, fine, tell it. Because I'm pretty sure that regardless of whether this happened or not, you are going to fail to make anything even resembling a good point.
And I said that biologists should not interfere with cosmology.
Well, that was a completely insane thing to say. Cosmology has little to nothing to do with the specifics of abiogenesis, unless you know something about the very first steps of life that no one else has ever heard before. And if you do, I am amazed that you aren't the world's most renowned science guy, instead of hanging out in some religion building telling lies to strangers all day.
A biologist should stay in biology and not start talking about cosmology, because that's another science.
And you know, a religious preacher type man should not talk about either, because he knows nothing about science at all, apparently. At least according to your own logic. I mean, I don't have any problem with it. I have made a career out of people saying things about shit they clearly don't understand. But yeah, maybe just don't be a massive hypocrite. That's my job.
Cosmology. And it reminded me of the
fact that you are a big silly dum-dum. Don't worry mate, it reminded us all of that too. I mean, for fuck's sake. What exactly are you prattling on about? Things that are about biology are actually about cosmology because I decided, and that mean me am the big smart. I don't think that's how the anything works, mate.
The joke about the biologists that meet God.
Oh yeah, I know that one. A biologist walks up to God in a bar and says, "Yo, what up, G-Yard?" And God is like, "Brap, brap, gangster." And then they start rubbing butts. It's like a whole thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't really get it either, but you know what they say? The Lord moves in mysterious ways.
And God asked them what they're up to, and they said, "Well, we've gotten rid of you."
Well, that doesn't even make no sense. I mean, if I die and go to heaven, I'm not going to go, nah, God, you don't exist, because I didn't have any evidence for you in life. Therefore, now I do have all the evidence I actually need. I'm going to ignore it. That would make me a religious person. Now, but seriously, why on earth would biologists tell God they have gotten rid of him to his face? Atheist or no, that's not what sciencing of any sort is about, really. What you seem to be confusing is that the idea that God created everything fully formed is not something that holds up to the evidence. But just because the books written by assholes are wrong about how life came to be, doesn't mean that biologists are actively trying to disprove it, or God, or whatever. They just followed the evidence. I would imagine what would actually happen if they got to heaven is that they would be like, "Yo, Geod," and butt rubbing would commence.
And God asked the biologist, "How did you get rid of me?"
Why did he ask that? Why did he ask anything? Surely he should know that. I hope they stared him down until he disappeared into a puff of utter stupidity.
And they said, "Well, we can explain how we got here without you."
Again, that doesn't make sense. No biologist would waste their time with such an asinine premise. God is irrelevant to the fact that we have a fairly strong understanding of how life came to be the way it is today. Whether God played any part of that is completely irrelevant to the fact that we can do that.
And he said, well, how would you do that? He said, well, first we take some cosmic dust. And God says, no, wait a second. Get your own dust.
Why would they say that? Why the fuck would the biologists start at cosmic dust? That doesn't make sense. And, what makes you think that God owns the dust anyway? That's an assumption. I mean, I get that the joke is contingent on God existing, at least in the joke cinematic universe, but seeing as this is supposed to be something that applies to our universe as well, God doing anything with dust, cosmic or otherwise, is just something you made up. And if these are atheists, science boys, they certainly aren't going to think, oh right, good point, I forgot that God owns all the dust, you great fucking twonk. And look, I'm sorry that I ruined your joke with all of these interruptions. Well, I didn't ruin it because it was already a shit joke that only an idiot would think was funny, so yeah, I'm not sorry.
Right. You see, because where did it all start?
Milton Keynes! Yep, one of the British towns of all time is where literally everything began. On a Tuesday at a fish and chip shop, someone put the cut-offs of the deep fried fish into a bread roll and boom, fucking universe happened. Shit was pretty dope. Also, to my British peeps, what is another word for this kind of bread roll that will completely melt our international viewers' minds? I'll go first. This is a bomb cake.
Where did we come from? Even if evolution explained how we have evolved as a species, it doesn't explain where the original material came from.
Guess what, Nuckfuts? It doesn't frickin' have to. That's why I know your little story about some biology teacher is probably bullshit. Because it's the kind of nonsense that would come from one of those Kirk Cameron or Mr. Disappointed himself stupid fucking propaganda movies. These people only exist in fiction, while the rest of us are just getting on with our lives until we have to stop and point out how everything you just said doesn't make any fucking sense.
Man cannot bring anything into existence from nothing.
Again, that has nothing to do with the origins of life. In fact, the origins of life has nothing to do with man. More than likely, unless there's some time travel-y going back and gauzing into the oceans or some shit. But then that would just be paradoxical nonsense, because how was he there to do that? Since if he wasn't, he would never have existed. But if he didn't exist, why does everything taste like copper? Also, how do you know mankind can't or won't be able to do that in the future? Are you the sea-spitting time traveler?
He makes organs from already existing cells. The cloning comes from already existing cells.
Wait, are we talking about cloning now? That's quite the non sequitur. And okay, but it wouldn't be cloning if they made cells from scratch? That's like the entire point of cloning? And this kind of sounds like grasping at straws, really, as science does more and more things. So you have to nitpick worse and worse God of the Gapsing like crazy. It's like, well, you can't make a living thing. And then they clone something and you go, well, you had to copy it from something else. I thought we couldn't do the first one at all, mate. Would you stop shifting the goalposts? You'll end up running into the goddamn freeway.
He's now in stem cell research and doing all of these things. Everything that he makes has pre-existing materials.
Well, yeah, he exists in this universe where that's what we have to work with for the moment. But at no point does that prove God. If there is not God, but those materials exist anyway, what difference does it actually make? The only reason you think that's a good point is because you think God made them. Well, okay, but I don't. Bit of a stalemate, really.
We cannot make anything out of nothing.
I don't know, you seem to be doing a pretty good job making this long, rambly diatribe out of your sheer ignorance of what science and more specifically biology is. If anything, you are proving quite handily that man can have absolutely nothing and make some really fucking stupid statements from that nothing. Good job.
It's impossible for humans to do that because nothing...
Jesus, titty fucking Christ, what the hell was that? God damn, you scared the fucking shit out of me. Was that you trying to prove a point by punching the shit out of a car or whatever? I'm sorry, dude, but your ability to slap a vehicle, possibly because it can contain a significant amount of pasta, is not reason for me to believe anything you have said. Fuck me.
Comes from nothing.
Nothing comes from nothing. I seriously doubt that you could even comprehend what nothing actually means. And that's a bit of a definitive statement there. I mean, it could be correct, but how do you know? And don't you believe that God can create things from nothing? Of course, your retort to that would be, aha, but goddamn do it, so it's not really from nothing. And aside from the fact that, well, yeah, because God doesn't exist, therefore he is nothing, lol. God getting to do things because me am say so isn't exactly convincing. If he can, then why perhaps couldn't humans do the same thing at some point? I mean, they have a habit of doing all the other shit, or at least figuring out how he didn't do a bunch of shit, so...
And this is why my own teacher said, كذب الملحدون.
Your own teacher? I can only assume that given your utter ignorance so far, that whatever that translates to is something utterly ridiculous that only a complete fucking moron would say.
The atheists are liars.
Ah, so I was right. And also, leave that fucking car alone. What did it ever do to you? Also, we're liars, are we? Well, so is your teacher and so are you. What's your point? Everybody lies. House MD taught me that one when it turned out that he was a limey with scarcely a bit of Bostonian in him. I mean, I already knew that, but it makes me chuckle how many people didn't. But yeah, liars, eh? About what exactly?
العدم لا يوجد الوجود. Non-existence cannot bring existence.
We are liars because of something completely irrelevant to our non-buying of your random ass claims. Honestly, and I know that this is hard to believe coming from a filthy piece of shit atheist like me, but it really sounds like you're lying by lack of intellect. That is to say, your stupidity is making you say things that aren't true as if they're facts because you don't understand shit about shit, which frankly has the same effect as if you were doing it on purpose. Atheists are not lying about the one thing that matters when it comes to their atheism though. They do not accept your claims, and that's literally all that fucking matters. Not that you're even capable of understanding that.
الفوضى لا يكون النظام. Anarchy or chaos cannot bring order into existence.
I think you'll find it can. When you have an open system taking its energy from another thing, you can absolutely get order happening. Guess what the Earth is? Because it's got that thing that you might not have heard of because you're too busy talking shit about people who are smarter than you. But that big fireball in the sky, that's called the sun. And it gives huge amounts of energy to the Earth. And that has allowed for so much of how things work down here to happen. And guess what? God didn't put it there. Because, you know, he didn't need to, just in case you were wondering.
Ignorance cannot bring knowledge into existence.
Holy shit, that is some epic fucking irony right there. Yeah, my dude, your ignorance of countless subjects is not gonna somehow magically make you knowledgeable. I mean, you already discounted yourself at the start of this when you said a scientist cannot talk about other sciences, even though according to you they were related. Well, you shouldn't be talking about literally fucking anything ever, since you clearly don't know anything.
And then he said, إنما هي انتكاس عقلي كمن يمشي على رأسه ورجلاه في الهواء.
Not gonna lie, it is a really interesting language to listen to, and I wish I spoke it. Mostly because he could be saying fucking anything right now and making up what it means. This very well could be a fucking shopping list for all we know. I just have to trust that's what it means.
This is the inversion, this is an intellectual inversion of reality, like somebody who's walking on his head and his feet are in the air.
Yeah, that definitely sounded a lot better in the original language. Also, it's kind of a shit analogy because, you know, people can do handstands and even walk like that. And we don't actually think that that's somehow ridiculous. It's, in fact, pretty impressive. Also, it's not even that. The real science that reals is an inversion of nothing. We know about the science we have, not because knowledge was taken from nowhere. It's because reality was studied and then our observations were taken and worked into models so we could figure out how things worked and make predictions. In fact, the only ones taking knowledge from nowhere, also known as pulling it out of your ass, are you guys, seeing as all religious texts are works of blatant fiction, merely purporting to be truth.
that this is something that humans have never believed.
I mean, whatever your previous nonsense was, humans have literally believed all sorts of wacky shit. No matter how ridiculous it is, or how made up it is a thing you are saying that someone else believes, there's still going to be someone somewhere who thinks that it's true, because some people just love to be special, more than they have any interest in being correct. They're weird like that.
And this argument now of the modern atheists, this is an ancient argument. Atheists have always been around.
And we are going nowhere, baby.
In fact, atheists were actually more sophisticated 100 years ago than they are today.
Considering that you don't seem to know anything about any atheists and that you just think that we're all liars, I seriously doubt you could possibly make that distinction. Also, look at my fancy suit. If this isn't the height of sophistication, I really don't know what is.
Wait, before you go, I have something super important to tell you. It's life or death. It will change everything forever. Nope, wait, it's gone. Oh well, probably wasn't important. But while I have you, don't forget to comment, subscribe and notify. And if you want more of my smexy voice, check out Mrs. Six's channel Spoonstaff Stories, where I narrate and voice all the videos, and she does the work. And if you want to support the channel, check out the merch store for cool t-shirts, or check out Patreon, memberships and PayPal to support directly. Finally, follow me on the medias of social to get completely pointless guff and to keep up on the latest releases. Oh, I just remembered what I was going to tell you. Whatever you do, don't touch the...